Today I'm going to be teaching you how to use frogs, pronouns, and sentences, so let's go!
Come on, get your stuff, let's go. No, we're good. We're good. Yeah, ribbit. Come on, grab it, I got your backpack. Let's go.
Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Hey folks, guess you heard. This morning I tested positive for COVID.
I genuinely did not know this, but cracker apparently is a slur used to oppress white people and silence them.
And when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
Dr. Fauci says he has COVID again.
Why not trust the parents to decide what's best for their kids?
What you're doing is you're incentivizing a lack of collaboration. If I'm competing directly against you, then I have a vested interest in doing better than you.
But isn't that good?
Not in education.
Like, I had no idea that you guys were being called Cracker, Taffy, 8 Mile, Albino, Betty, Crocker, Cracker Jack, Dog Fucker, Egg, Pasty, Ghost, Hick, Hillbilly, Keebler, Mayflower, Mayonnaise. Like, shit! Like, it's been used to oppress and silence you? Like, damn, I wish it worked. Shut the fuck up.
If you've done the right thing and gotten vaccinated, you deserve the freedom to be safe from COVID-19. And this morning, I learned I tested positive for COVID-19 as well.
The job that I had worked really hard to get and meant a lot to me just called me and fired me because of everything.
Pamela Birch Fort, Florida State Conference of NAACP branches, waves in opposition. Anita Dick is an opponent. Waves in opposition. Holden Hiscock is also an opponent. Waves in opposition.
If somebody has $500 and they've already paid taxes on it and they give it to me, so now just because it goes from them to me, I also have to pay taxes on it, even though they just did. And then not only that, but anytime I spend one of those $500, I'm going to also pay another tax fee on whatever item I'm buying. And then whoever I bought the item from will have to pay taxes on the money they just earned from what I bought. So, like, so every single dollar, like, if a dollar is 100 cents, hold on. Just forget it.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just tweeting out that he has tested positive for COVID. This would be the second time the Prime Minister has tested positive.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
We tried to reach out to the man who died in this pursuit. They were unavailable for comment. Micah, back to you.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
I'm your father, Dr. Evil.
I do not want to believe that, because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
I've been frozen for 30 years, okay?
For more than 30 years.
Throw me a frickin' bone here.
Give me a hug.
And we need to be really blowing up our elected officials' offices.
This motherfucker got my safe cigarette disposal container and ate all the but he ate a bunch of fucking joints. He is so fucking high, I have to take him to the goddamn vet so he doesn't die.
You know, it's man, that all my friends in bands and stuff, they used to play shows and bitch about government and how government fucked everybody over and how much they hated it and stuff. And then they grow older and now they join a party and they act like their opinion matters. Like, oh, well, maybe government's okay since I'm a Democrat or since I'm a Republican. But it's not. It's the same government you bitched about when you were fucking 20 years old playing in a fucking death metal band or a thrash band or whatever the fuck you played in. You just got old and soft. You just got senile and brainwashed. And now you're just a fucking stupid son of a... Fuck you!
Yeah, yeah! I have the power of God!
Trump has been arrested. Trump is in prison for 5 seconds. What are we going to do? Never mind that they're working on passing the Patriot Act of the internet that will destroy all privacy in the world. No, Trump is in jail, everybody.
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Greetings, free as in speech thoughts. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I will be Patrick Smith. Today's guest is the co-founder of something that none of you have probably heard of, honestly, called the Free Thought Project. And he also founded another thing that none of this audience has heard of, called Police the Police. He's been featured in Reason, InfoWars, RT, The Tom Woods Show. The Rolling Stone called him one of the most extensive recorders of law enforcement misbehavior in America. Welcome to the show, Jason Bassler. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Thanks. They also call me a fringe conspiracy theorist, too, in the same article. So I don't know how much, I really want to give any credence to Rolling Stone, especially these days. But yeah, Patrick Smith, thank you so much for having me on, brother. Pleasure to be here and, looking forward to this conversation. Maybe a little overdue. I think we had probably planned on talking right after Float Fest last year, which was like late April. So, hey, I totally know how it goes. My family was sick with something like the plague for like 2 months at the beginning of the year. I was actually just on Punk Rock Libertarians podcast last night. I was supposed to do that with them right after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. So I'm just a little behind on all this stuff, but I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And I might even have a few questions for you, believe it or not, this evening. So yeah, and I might note, this is my second time on Anarchast, my first time with Jeff Berwick back in 2016. So
yeah, so you're absolved from having to answer how you became an anarchist. You've already done that.
I have indeed.
Rolling Stone called you the most extensive recorder of law enforcement misbehavior. Why is it misbehavior when law enforcement murders people and crimes when other people do?
It's a great question. More of that double speak that we're all so familiar with, I think, and Rolling Stone is certainly brilliant at that. And that actually was written by the great Matt Taibbi, if you believe it or not.
I do,
so,
unfortunately.
I think he actually said in a Joe Rogan episode not too long ago that specific article got moderated by the editors like pretty heavily. So they had to change even the title, quite a few other things in it. And I think that's right when they were really kind of cracking down on the right-wing conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and stuff, So it makes sense why they had to moderate the language a bit, tame it down for more of their liberal audience.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this conversation, same as you, for too long. We've built up a long list of cool stuff to talk about. When we were bumping heads at Float Fest, we were hanging out talking about censorship. I think you gave a talk at the event about social media censorship, and this was before Elon bought Twitter, so I definitely want to get into that. And then more recently, you had a good tweet about spanking. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was like, you can't call yourself a freedom advocate or something like that if you spank your children.
Extra edgy.
Yeah, and I gave that a big old heart and a retweet, and then somebody was arguing with you in the comments, and I invited them onto my show, and over on Disenthrall we had like an hour and a half conversation where I tried to tried to reason with this guy on the spanking topic, and it all came down to basically his faith in the existence of God and God telling him to do it. So it was it was a really difficult one to argue. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the topic, and I know you watched that podcast, so what do you think about it all?
Yeah, indeed. And, you mentioned in the in the podcast that it was an edgy tweet, and I actually have it brought up right here. It was, don't call yourself a freedom advocate if you spank your kids. Freedom starts in the home, and more importantly, in the mind, which is exactly why authoritarian violence should never be normalized. And, that's actually a response to another tweet that I had put out a few days earlier that got quite a bit of pushback by a lot of people in the freedom community, surprisingly, who were telling me that, they're advocates of spanking, of discipline, of obedience. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And of course, I'm not unfamiliar with this. This is something that seems to have plagued the logical consistency of the liberty movement for I don't know how many decades, as long as I've been in, which has been a little over a decade now. So I certainly had to push back a little bit, and that's what instigated that tweet that I just shared with you guys. So I did see the Utah gun guy's response. It was a typical kind of knee-jerk reaction for, maybe the religious conservative type. And to his benefit, after watching the conversation that you guys had, it seems like he had thought it out maybe a little bit more than the average normie who fits the political parameters as far as their identity, so I give him that much. Like it wasn't so much of like a subconscious, like my parents did it, so I feel like I need to do it. In fact, he even had a few arguments of his own. Whether, we agree with the validity of the argument or not, that's kind of a different subject. But at the end of the day, I certainly give him credit for stepping up to the plate and defending his point of view. It's not easy, especially when you're like pro child abuse. And I don't want to straw man him too hard. I know he made that a specific point to say like, hey, like spanking and child abuse are two different things, and I don't engage in child abuse. But I think that's a very fine line there, and I think the argument could be made that spanking could be regarded as child abuse. So to me, I don't know. I feel like he still has a little bit more work to do as far as stepping through some of those, I guess, moral consistency questions. But the thing I found the most fascinating, Patrick, was like people like yourself and myself, we have this hierarchy of value, right? And for us being like philosophical minded, I think we probably think of ourselves as like halfway intelligent, for us, like logic and reason.
Halfway, yeah.
For us, logic and reason are kind of at the top of our priority scale. But for somebody like the Utah gun guy, more of this like traditionalist, like religious kind of belief system, what's at the top of his priority scale as far as beliefs is the Bible and the scriptures and everything that's within the Bible. So it seems like there's really not much debating outside of that kind of circle of argument, and even when you were throwing questions at him that were yes or no questions that kind of required more of a little bit of a logical foundation, he wasn't able to really muster up or articulate exactly his point. And instead, he would kind of fall back on, what the Bible says and his religious beliefs. And, there was some nuance to a few of his points. So again, like it wasn't just, pure filler. It seemed like he had, again, some of his own beliefs that he's harbored over the years and probably taken some pride in. But for me, there's just too many inconsistencies. And I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure we could get, knee deep in this conversation, but to me, there's just so many problems with spanking our children, and one, as I know you've said 100 times, these are some of the most defenseless people in society. They don't sign a contract to be in our households. They don't sign a contract to be born into our family. So they don't really have any place to go or escape to, or they don't have any recourse. I guess there is through some like status legal, systems and whatnot, but sometimes most of the time that makes things 100 times worse. So there's just so many problems with this mentality that, we can bend the non-aggression principle to teach our children to be obedient, to raise them with this, I guess, foundation of being aware of certain types of dangers and certain, I don't know, beliefs and stuff like that. And so one way or another, it's not teaching them how to self-regulate. It's not teaching them to trust their intuition. You know, instead it's teaching them fear of punishment, and that obedience, you know, is something that has to be complied with because authority tells us to do so. So I could probably keep ranting for another 10 minutes here, but you know, by all means, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's all wrapped up in, there's something built into our species. And this makes sense, I guess, from like an evolutionary perspective, that whatever our parents do to us or around us or with us when we're children, we accept as the default right and correct and safe and best thing to do.
Correct.
And we don't question that. And most people, and I feel safe in saying most people, never question what their parents did. To question what your parents did was to judge your parents, which is sort of like this deep-seated emotional thing that's just anathema. It makes people very uncomfortable to challenge what their parents did. And you know, if you're alive and kicking and have attained some modicum of safety and success in life, you would tend to incorporate anything your parents did as well. You know, it couldn't have been that bad. Look at where I am now. And
such the default argument.
It really is. And it's difficult. And I think my empathy with the people helps me in conversations with them, because I can really feel, because I was there. I parented my oldest kid forcefully, traditionally, with spanking and the whole 9 yards. And when you go through that change of mindset, when you really reason your way through it instead of feel your way through it, you have to confront what your parents did to you from a moral perspective. And that confrontation, that conflict with sort of your inner parent's voice, as well as your parents that are probably still alive and you still have active relationships with them, that's something you have to work through. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I empathize greatly with people that do it. And more so, like you said, with the guy that had the balls to go from a Twitter clapback to an actual hour-and-a-half long discussion about some very deep topics and deeply held beliefs of his. I mean, kudos to that guy for sure. But sure. And it's on me for not giving you enough time to join us on that show, and I apologize for that. But I was curious if you had any thoughts, like when he came with these positions and these responses to what you said. And I think he walked back his tweet pretty hard in the chat. And I know we're talking about a conversation that none of the viewers now have seen, but I wanted to at least give you an opportunity to give your response to his position, if you had any.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And, you know, if it was 2-on-1, he might have felt a little cornered. So I think it was probably best the way you handled it. And now we're following up, and hey, you could probably send him a link to this conversation and be like, well, this is, you know, further discussing the points that you had made. And so I'm totally okay with that. But just to kind of further this discussion a little bit, I'm sure you're familiar, being an Anarchapulco regular, with the work of Dana Martin. Mm-hmm. But we had Dana Martin on our podcast, I think in September of last year. And as much as I thought I knew about like peaceful parenting and unschooling and stuff, like she really kind of blew my mind when it came to the concept of the authoritarian parenting paradigm versus the partnership parenting paradigm. And there's just such a profound difference there that I don't even think 99.9% of America is even aware of, that there's these two completely different parenting techniques and methods. And I would say 99.8%, well, maybe, okay, 98% of America has probably been parented under the authoritarian parenting paradigm. So this is something that was a game changer for me, just because when you're able to mentally conceptualize exactly what your role as a parent is, it almost is empowering in a sense, because you could use this partnership parenting paradigm as kind of the backbone of being a guardian to your parent, or to your child, excuse me, rather than this authoritarian figure who's barking orders and a lot of times just giving arbitrary demands. And a lot of times it's my way or the highway, and behavior modification and all these things. So to me, I would very much urge anybody who's interested in this topic to check out some of Dana Martin's work as well as yours. I know you have a vast catalog of information and knowledge regarding this topic, and even David James Rodriguez, he's another one that I think is really great in this space. But there's just so many different ways to parent your children that doesn't require force. It doesn't require authoritarian mentality, and more or less, yeah, like I was saying, behavior modification, which there's a lot of problems in that as well. You know, it's antiquated, it's outdated, it's not freedom based. You know, it stems from more of this like traditionalist kind of thinking, you know, and conservative thinking, like religious belief systems and stuff. But ultimately, it's rooted in fear, and that's the problem, you know. And I think, as Mark Passio says, you know, all choices and decisions are ultimately made out of fear or love. And if we're going to be choosing the way that we're going to be parenting our children, I'd much rather parent the love in mind. I know it sounds a little hippy dippy, but that being kind of the central place that I'm coming from rather than fear. So I don't understand why this is such a controversial topic, and why more freedom activists, anarchists, libertarians haven't really adopted it.
The only way the state exists and the belief in that authority exists, and the only way people think it's okay to hit kids, is because literally that's how they were raised. That was the reality that they entered when they began their existence, and they accepted it as normal by default. And it was like you said, like your kid didn't pick you as a parent. They didn't choose your home as a place to live. You put them there. You own that situation. You are culpable for everything that happens to that kid, full stop. And this is one of the things I talk about. My content, if anybody wants to find it, is there's a YouTube channel and an Odysee channel called the Peaceful Parenting University. And I have a series of videos where I just start from square one. And square one is literally that. You created that situation. If anything bad happens, if the kid does something you don't like, it is on you. You created that situation. You taught them everything they know. You are their sole influence, at least for the first, you know, probably half of their life, unless you put them in public school, in which case we need to have a separate conversation. But if you, if you put them in that situation, you have to own the effects of your actions. You're culpable for it. And you sort of need to afford them extra deference, not less, because they didn't pick that. They're not there consensually. So you need to be extra careful to respect things like their rights and their consent and their property. And anyway, that's a long conversation. I know you agree with all of that, but you told me about something that I didn't know about. You are putting out a children's book with the Free Thought Project. What's that about?
Yeah, indeed. Very excited to share it. In fact, we just announced it on our podcast that recently dropped, actually yesterday, with Larkin Rose, one of your good buddies. And we've been working on it since like late 2021. So it's long overdue, but it's now finally going to print. We just talked to the publisher today. So it's called Little Free Thinkers. That's going to be the name of the series, and it's Know Your Rights. So it's going to be one book. I have a volume of hopefully at least 5 or 6, basically teaching kids all about liberty. This one's kind of within our wheelhouse, maybe more so than the other topics, just because, you know, the police accountability work is very much part of our focus. But it's focused and targeted more towards kids 8 to 12, so a little bit older. But yeah, man, got all the everything pretty much edited and finalized. So within the next couple of weeks, we should have a hard copy in our hands to start promoting with. And the website is actually up now. So if you guys want to take a look, it's littlefreethinkers.com. And we're really excited about it. Like, this could be maybe a Tuttle Twins for like the anarchist voluntarist community, you know, instead of more of like the conservative base. And don't get me wrong, like I'm a fan of the Tuttle Twins too. I got, you know, some of the books for the kids and everything, but there's a niche here. There's an opening. It seems like, you know, that we don't have to just, you know, shoehorn everything in through the conservative movement. So I'm excited about it. I know Matt is too. And again, if this does well, and if you guys pick it up, you guys really like it, we're just going to write more and more. So hopefully it does well.
Let me know as soon as I can get my hands on one. I would love to go through it with my kids who are around 9 years old right now, actually. Perfect. So that would be perfect. And I'd love to do a review. And if you and Larkin want to come on the show once it releases, we can definitely go through that. That's awesome. We need more people creating for liberty instead of just bitching on Twitter. So good on you. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and especially just targeted and focused at our kids. And again, this is the future generations. These are the people who are going to be carrying the mantle from the freedom movement that we're creating right now. So we got to give them a good foundation and give them the knowledge they need. So yeah, it's very important.
Okay, now I'm going to bring the mood down a little bit. So, oh man, I think the first time we met was at like a campaign event for the Texas Libertarian Party where all the different, I guess, gubernatorial candidates for Texas were meeting. I don't even remember the purpose of the meeting now, and I guess it's not important. But I remember one of the first things I thought about when you remember? Okay, cool. One of the first things I remember thinking about when I was thinking about Police to Police was that it's one of the only platforms that I have followed and unfollowed like 5 times because I hit this limit where I'm just hit in the face constantly with tyranny and murder and theft and the real-time destruction of people's lives at the hands of government enforcers. And it's important that people see this, and I'm glad that you do it. But at the same time, my question, I think I may have even asked you the first time we met, was how do you do it? How do you keep looking at that and publishing it and focusing on just this terrible stuff day in and day out for years and years? Like, I can't even follow Police to Police without taking breaks from time to time. How do you do it? Like, what's your? I guess what I'm doing is I'm digging for a white pill. Like, what's your protection against just being so jaded by all this?
Oh, Patrick, if you could only see my soul, it's smoldering, it's charred, man, from watching all these pretend. I'm not joking. It is pretty rough, and I wish I had the magic bullet or the magic white pill to share with you. Unfortunately, I don't. I think it's just a matter of compartmentalizing emotion and just not allowing it to really affect me on like a day-to-day basis. Because even still, at our height, we were covering 6 stories a day, whether government accountability, a lot of it was police accountability. But after we lost our writers, after the purge and everything, we're down to about 3 a day. So even still, we're taking in a lot of this stuff, and I'm sharing stuff on Instagram and Twitter and all that. So it's not easy, man. It's not easy. And, it's such an important topic. And sometimes I do wonder, I ask myself, like, is this doing more harm than good? Am I like turning people off like yourself who maybe are getting desensitized to all this police violence, all this state violence by police employees, because look, like back in 92, was it 92 or 93 with Rodney King, that was a video of a person getting beat by police officers. And don't get me wrong, it was bad. It was pretty brutal, but he didn't die. Like, he was still alive. And people burnt down the city of Watts in Los Angeles over that video. And now it seems like it's become so commonplace that I do wonder if maybe it is doing, more damage as far as to our psyche and turning people away from wanting to know about this stuff. And so unfortunately, I haven't really come to terms with it one way or another. I've just continued the work, and I do think it's important to expose it. I think it is important to have a documented record and an archive, and that's originally what Police to Police started out as, is just being an archive for all these different stories that are happening frequently. I was inundated by one story after another, link after link, article after article, video after video when I first started this. And I basically told myself, like, I need to do something to document all this because it needs to be someplace where people could see it. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's maybe helped the lexicon of, public opinion as far as being more aware. But then again, like last year, there was more people killed by police in the US than any other year on record, so it's I can't really quantify exactly if things are getting better or getting worse. I could certainly say there's more awareness, and I think that's an important part.
by telling you that, I wasn't trying to get you to stop doing what you're doing. I was trying to figure out how I was trying to figure out what the secret is so that I can stay following Police to Police and maybe even create content of my own a lot in the same vein to help. So I was just trying to get your secret, not trying to discourage you. I think the world needs to see. And if the world gets jaded by it, I think they need to get jaded by it because it's what was going on for years and years and years before. It's just now that you're able to see it. I think that's vital. And if people don't like it or have their faith reduced in the justice system because of it, that's what we need. So thank you for your service in a very serious way.
It's one of the end goals. Yeah.
And remind me when we're off the podcast, I have an idea for something maybe we can partner with. But anyway, okay, so that was leading up to talking about what happened to me, which will lead us into the next topics that I'd like to have you tell us about. So there was this triple punch where it was that guy, they called him the sovereign citizen, that got pulled over for a license plate, and the cops just firing squatted him outside of his vehicle. I can't remember his name now. So I saw that.
Yes, we covered that. Right.
And then immediately after that, there was like a school shooting, and then and I made a video on my channel being like, look guys, I'm tapping out on this one because I had hit my threshold again. Like I just can't turn off my empathy for the victims of a lot of this stuff. And so it sort of outrages me. And then my outrage sort of dominates my peace. It's hard for me to maintain peace when I need to work on controlling my empathy for these situations is what I'm saying. So it was that, then it was the school shooting. And then it wasn't the school shooting that bothered me this time, although it was tragic. It was just this, here we go again, where everyone in the world is writing new gun control laws and trying to take my freedom away on the backs of what this criminal did when he murdered some children. And then I was just like, okay, I'm so done with this. I'm fed up with politics. I'm fed up with this constant stream of negativity that's totally outside of my control. And then, at the same time that was going on, or immediately following that, or right before it, I forget the exact order, there's this, Restrict Act, which now they're really going to screw up our ability to communicate privately on the internet. And, I just was like, okay, I'm out. I turned the phone off. I'm walking away. Those are the three topics that I haven't followed much recently, and I didn't follow them on purpose. So I know very little bit more than the headlines about the Restrict Act, and I hear that you were following that. So I would love if you could give me like the full breakdown of what they're doing now while they try and distract us by arresting Trump.
Sure. Yeah. So the Restrict Act, also known as the TikTok ban bill, also known as SB 686. It's quite precarious, quite ominous, and it's coming kind of off the heels of a lot of this kind of global destabilization with the economy, the global economy, and the de-dollarization, which is kind of a big deal that's happening right now. Like the reserve currency, which has always been the dollar, is starting to kind of fluctuate. A lot of other countries are starting to kind of look at the yuan and start to use other forms of currency. And I think this is going to start to heat up the privacy wars and everything. So this basically is a bill, as I said, it's been billed by the media as being the TikTok ban bill, but it's actually far from it. And it's much more than just that. And ironically enough, TikTok and ByteCrunch, the parent company that owns TikTok, aren't even named in the bill. So it's open-ended, it's intentionally vague, and it does a few things. It gives more control to the US government in the global digital economy. It gives new powers to POTUS and to the Secretary of Commerce to, quote, review and prohibit certain transactions between persons in the United States and foreign adversaries. So it also gives them the power to make up their own definitions, to make up their own parameters, to how to enforce this stuff. And it basically...
What's a foreign adversary and who decides?
Exactly. It's the Secretary of Commerce is going to be the person who arbitrarily gets to define that. Right. So it's more or less, Patrick, it's indiscriminately and arbitrarily allowing certain businesses and products into the US economy. So it's just more control for the global digital economy, because obviously the US economy is a cash cow. It's something that most countries want to be involved with, but it's basically, there's so many different parts of this too. People are also saying that there's provisions in the bill that will give government control over your tech, like things like your cell phone, your Ring camera. I mean, there's like certain elements of this that goes way past what NSA is already doing with the surveillance and the PRISM program and everything that Snowden already told us about. And as you had mentioned, in the very beginning, a lot of people are calling it the Patriot Act on steroids. So it was introduced by Mark Warner of Virginia. And of course, it's something that's being supported by both Republicans and Democrats. And more or less, it's just going to be expanding the surveillance state into a place that we don't really want it to be. Oh, here's the kicker too. I almost forgot about this. There's also part written into the bill that if you use any of these websites or any apps, let's say like a VPN to circumvent some of these regulations and circumvent the law, then you're subjected to a 20-year prison sentence or a $250,000 fine. And of course, they're already kind of backpedaling on some of that and saying the language is only going to apply to, certain like foreign adversaries or something, if they're the ones that are using the VPN or the ones that are kind of circumventing some of this stuff. But we know how government works, and a lot of this is so vague the way it's written with the language that it could very easily be, ushered in, and they could apply it any way that they want to, and, any arbitrary way.
Yeah, it's not like law enforcers, when they look at a law and decide what to prosecute somebody on, it's not like they look at the law and then find the narrowest possible definition to use that law and hold themselves accountable for that. No. They usually stretch the law beyond recognition and charge people anyway. So how does it affect, what's the privacy implication? Like, I'm hearing that it's terrible for privacy. Do you know anything about like what it's doing in that regard?
I think it's just giving more access to these government surveillance. I mean, I'm honestly a little confused on that aspect as well, because, as far as like 2014 is concerned, like I thought this was a lot of the stuff they were already doing, but that's kind of more of like the vague write-ups that were mentioning that. They didn't really get into specifics. Unfortunately, I didn't get into much of the details about that aspect of it, but it certainly sounds pretty ominous in its, essence. And once again, it's one of these bills that probably the majority of the people that, the Senate are going to be voting on it, they're not going to read it. It's so, I keep using this word open-ended because that's how they're purposely framing it. That's how they're purposely putting it in to our public view. So again, that's going to give them an open blank check, an open door to do anything that they want. And I think that's the part that a lot of people are kind of worried about, I guess you could say.
Well, I want to shout out, there's a guy named Ija who's been a long time crypto hacker. He's spoken at DEF CON many, many times. And he's had a long history of writing sort of heavily encrypted, like government resistant level encryption for file sharing and chat and communities. And the software's been used for a long time. And I want to shout out his latest project that is about to release in 2 months called Rift. I have sort of special privileged beta access to it. And if anybody wants to try it out, hit us up on our Discord server. And we have a server running. It's like a Discord replacement that's self-hostable, end-to-end encrypted with like serious encryption. And you can finally sort of have a bit of privacy in your communities. So that's going to be releasing in 2 months, and I'm actually going to start a company to provide hosting for that product. So if you're interested, hit us up, get in on the beta, and check that out. I think the world needs more of this right now, not less.
That actually reminds me. Sorry to interrupt here. I know it's I don't mean to cut you off at all, Patrick. That actually reminded me, though. I know you're a big tech nerd. I know you're very much into the back end of all the websites and coding and programming and all that stuff. Okay, what in the world happened to Float? I don't think anybody had any type of explanation. Do you mind? Can you talk about it? I mean, I love Float. I'm definitely disappointed that it took a turn, and any I don't know. I guess anything that you could fill in as far as some of the details would be great. I'm sure your audience is curious too.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so I don't have any kind of contractual obligation not to say anything. I want to be professional, and so that's my limitation. If you, so if you have any questions, ask, and I'll do my best. I don't want to be like, this is not like a secretive cabal kind of weird thing. It's just like, I want to be professional about it. Right. So
sure.
I think Float, the website, might still be running right now. I don't know. I exited the company months ago.
Oh shit. I missed that.
Oh yeah. I resigned, I don't know how many months ago now, maybe four months ago, something like that. Look, first of all, King and Aaron are absolutely great people. They're pleasant, they're helpful, they're friendly, they're kind, they have good hearts. They're not out there trying to trick anybody or anything like that. Running freedom-oriented companies and developing freedom-oriented products is very difficult because we're a small group and there's not a lot of money in it. And unless you really have a business plan that's going to really be profitable to the point where you're self-sustainable, you're going to have trouble. And social media is sort of a thankless market. And the big tech has trained everyone to expect most of it for free. And even the alternative social medias are mostly still offered for free, and they're advertising based. And just like you have like the network effect on Facebook that prevents people from wanting to leave to go to other social networks, you also have the same kind of chicken and egg problem with advertisers. If you don't have people, you're not going to get advertising. If you don't have advertising, you're not going to get revenue. If you're not going to get revenue, you're not going to be able to keep the site around or grow the site or advertise to grow the site to get the numbers that you need to sell advertising. So I think, I mean, it's just, we need to come up with, in general, the whole freedom community. I would like to see more capitalists in the freedom community, but we need to really put the capitalism in anarcho-capitalism in a big way. And it's not easy. We're a small community, we're a niche community, and we're competing with really big entrenched interests. And yeah, so, and then the last thing I'll say while remaining professional, and of course, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me, but I felt really weird about the float token. I never had anything to do with it when I was on the inside of the company. And I just didn't feel comfortable continuing on with that situation. So I needed to sort of disassociate. You know, they're good people. I wish them well. I still consider them friends, but I think they're moving on to another venture now as well. I think they're going to morph Float into something maybe like Restream, where it's like a content repeater platform where if you want to post one thing, it'll maybe repeat it out to multiple sites or restream video for you or something like that. So
I think they're calling it Flex.
Okay. I have not kept up to date with that project.
Sure. No, but that fills in some blanks for sure.
It's hard to make money, man, especially in the freedom space. And we need more of it. And it's challenging. So
I know firsthand.
I don't mean to be awkward. It's just like, you don't want to, it's sort of unprofessional to talk about, previous engagements. So,
Yeah. No, you weren't awkward at all. I feel like, that makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you taking the time on, your own show to answer that for me. So thank you for that.
No, you're totally, well, I mean, you're about accountability, right? Hold me accountable. It's totally cool. So my next venture is going to be a company called Zero Eyes Hosting, which is a play on the words. I'm sure you're familiar with the term Five Eyes. The Five Eyes countries are the countries that have the agreements between each other. So if like a United States law enforcement agency can't spy supposedly on Americans, and so what they do is they just go ask Europe or Australia or one of the other Five Eyes to do the spying on you for them, and then they just hand over the information So it's just like this big hand in glove collusion between these massive countries in the world. And so the hosting company is like it's going to be my first attempt to form a company, a hosting company that I would trust, or as close as possible to a company that I would trust to host my own stuff. So I'm working on forming it. We're going to form the corporation in Switzerland, which is the best of the worst. I mean, it's like the best place on the planet to form a corporation in terms of privacy. They will oftentimes literally, when they get like demands for information from places like the United States government, they'll just put the request in the garbage can right next to their desk, so it's pretty good in that regard. But it's also weird because it's like the seat of the UN in the world. So it's like, it's the best of the worst places on the planet to form a company. So we're going to form a company there. We'll try and get hosting there or Norway or something like that. And we're going to really put it together. The purpose of the first thing we're going to host for people is that Rift application that I told you the other guy is developing. So I really want to provide competition to places like Discord, which I don't know if you have a Discord community for Free State or anything like that, but I'm sure you're aware of how they're starting to spy on even voice conversations and stuff like that. So
I've been hearing that for a while. Yeah, within Discord, they do have some interesting moderation practices over there, and I know a lot of people who've really taken to the Discord communities for various things. I know it's popular for gaming and stuff, are starting to kind of back away from it, like many of us are with the mainstream social media networks, and even the normies, man. Like even the normies are just tired of all this stuff, So
yeah,
in a way, hopefully that will start to kind of force their hand. But I feel like in many ways, like I see like the moderation's getting worse, and then in some ways I should say the reach that they're giving us is getting worse, but the moderation feels like it got a little better as far as like the fact checking and the strikes and stuff after Elon bought Twitter, because it seemed like the game kind of changed. Like there was a new playing field all of a sudden or something. So
you talked about social media censorship at FloatFest and at Anarchapulco as well, right? Do I have you right on that?
No, not at our Anarchapulco. No,
okay.
Just at FloatFest. Yeah. But that's something I've been talking about for years, and I alluded to it earlier, but I guess if you're following, your listeners aren't familiar with our story, just really briefly, we had like a huge, I think nearly 6 million fans that we accumulated between the years of 2013 and 2018. And then in October of 2018, Facebook and Twitter, both on the same day, within hours of each other, took down our accounts, took down our pages. We lost, nearly 6 million fans. And
that was shortly after Alex Jones, which was the first big one that got banned, right? You guys weren't too far behind.
Yeah. It was a few months later, but Jones was the first one that, got like deplatformed, all the different platforms, all like at the same time. Not at the same time, actually. I think Twitter was the holdout at one point. I think Twitter was like, no, we're going to give him a chance. Like and then he had, said something, and then they took him off as well. But the thing that was interesting to me, and it didn't really get any attention at the time, and of course now, like all the censorship has been normalized, but when Twitter and Facebook are doing it within hours of each other, there's obvious collusion there. And that was something that the media, if they were actually doing their job, should have picked up on. And I actually learned about the whole purge, as it's been dubbed now, by actually going on to look at the news. And I was skimming through the news, and I saw the LA Times that had a story that Facebook purged 800 plus pages and accounts. And then I go to Facebook and I look at my page, and I was one of them. So somehow LA Times and all the national news syndicates already had gotten the word that this was something that was going to be going down and had stories written for it. So
everybody knew except you. Yeah.
It's insane how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I don't particularly trust Musk in a few different ways, but that is one thing I could appreciate, is that he has kind of opened that can of worms, and hopefully, like maybe someday we'll actually get some of the quote Facebook files, and we'll actually know who specifically was orchestrating it. And in fact, actually, here I just got an email from Matt Taibbi a couple of weeks ago. Let me bring it up really quick. I still communicate with him very infrequently, but he basically said that he found a big file in the Twitter files compiled by the Digital Forensics Research Lab which was the third-party entity hired by the Atlantic Council. Atlantic Council partnered with Facebook a couple months before the purge to moderate policy and give suggestion to Facebook. And the Atlantic Council is funded by a bunch of different like NATO groups, the U.S. Army, Big Pharma, Google, the HSBC group. I mean, all these shady characters. And of course, through their backdoor infiltration, they were the same people who basically got us taken down on Facebook. So Matt Taibbi actually said he found in the Twitter files actual evidence that they were suggesting that they take us down on Twitter. Luckily, Twitter wasn't buying it, I guess is what he was saying. But he basically said, like, this vindicates us, and I'm kind of pressing Taibbi now, because if he does have that proof, if he does have that evidence, and there's actually documents that say the Free Thought Project was instructed to be taken down by, the Atlantic Council or whatever, this is a huge payday for us. This is something that we could sue on First Amendment grounds. We could rebuild our organization. We could get back our writers. We could actually be a formidable force again in the alternative media, ecosphere. So hopefully that is something that transpires. I'm not holding my breath at this point, because these types of things, it's.
I don't think most people are aware of what happened following your complete deplatforming. So you just talked about being able to hire back these resources. So can you tell us, like, what was the fallout? What did you lose? What state were you at, and where are you now?
Yeah. So, we had a thriving business. We started in 2013, and within the first year, we were in the top 500 websites in the country. I remember being like right above like Discovery, discoverychannel.com or some shit. It was just like, this is blowing our minds. But it was because, as we were talking about earlier, people were interested in and hungry for police accountability information that didn't have a leftist slant to it, because police accountability is a big deal. It affects a lot of people. A lot of people are interested in it, especially libertarians. But we were one of the first groups, along with like Cop Block and a few others, to actually be producing daily articles about these stories. So we immediately saw a huge following. We shot up within our global rankings, within the Facebook rankings. And like I said, we accumulated, 6 million fans. So I had just bought a house 2 weeks prior to the purge happening. I thought I had some stability. I thought I had spent the last 5 years building this huge audience. Finally bought my very first house. My girlfriend was pregnant. We're like, all right, we're going to do this. And Facebook pulls the rug out from underneath us. And within that same day, we basically had to let go of our entire writing staff. We had accumulated 7 different writers, people who were experts in a bunch of different fields. We had a biologist. We had a guy who had a master's degree and was like an expert on geopolitics. We had a guy who was really into the drug war and the drug scene. And like, we had this like all-star crew. I mean, Derek Bros wrote for us. Your boy Larkin Rose even wrote for us. Josie Wales, Cassandra Fairbanks, if you could believe that or not. We had all these different people who were writing for us. And within the click of a mouse, we had to let them all go. We had 3 different social media team members making videos, making memes, had to let them all go.
It was because you lost revenue from Facebook? Or where was the
what
was the thing that hurt?
Basically, we were ad rev based. We were doing actually pretty good numbers in the ad revenue world. And of course, that whole world has changed as well. Now Facebook and Google dominate like 50% of that world, the ad markets. So, but back in those days, you could actually make good money. And we did. And we were able to employ, 7 different writers and activists, full-time jobs, doing this full-time instead of working at some shit job that they hated. So yeah,
and what do you do now? Like, what does it look like now?
So I'm still full-time trying to do this. It's within the last 2 years, the revenue streams have really dried up to the point where I'm not doing, I'm not bringing in a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. So we're trying to diversify the revenue streams, and the children's book is one of those things. I have a few other things that I've been working on kind of behind the scenes. But this is kind of like a changing industry right now. Nobody really knows which way to go. People are doing the ebooks, people are doing the online conferences, but nobody really has like a solid source of revenue. And if you do, it's only because you have a huge following, a huge platform, and you happen to be on the good graces of the algorithm gods, with these big tech companies who allow you to get the reach that's even necessary to get the donations or subscriptions or Substacks or whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah. Man.
It's a tough time right now, man. It's a very tough time for independent journalists. I don't think enough people realize that. And as you said a few minutes ago, we've been conditioned to believe that everything on the internet is supposed to be free. So when people like myself ask for donations or subscriptions, even when we have like a tier that's like $3 a month or $5 a month, it's like, no, like, why would I do that? I could just go to some other source of news, or I could just, and that's the problem, is because if we're going to they've already inched us out through big tech and through legacy media kind of taking over the wave that we started with the alternative media. And now it's like even our own team, our own side, people within our own sphere are kind of not necessarily supporting alt media. So I don't want to walk the line of feeling entitled here, but at the same time, like, we do need to do more to support each other if we want to see more media outside of legacy media.
You have to put your resources behind the activism that you want to see more of in the world. That you can't just sit back and be content with just being subscribed to a YouTube channel. Like that's not, like, we have a small group of very awesome supporters that basically all of the money that I get from the supporters go to pay a producer that helps organize and upload and deal with shows. And man, we could do so much if we had more resources, but YouTube has beaten the shit out of like the Anarchast. Like, we get less views on YouTube on the Anarchast now than we get on oftentimes on Odysee, and Jeff has it syndicated on Vigilante TV, and now we're streaming to Rumble, who I'm pretty sure is inflating their view count. It's very suspiciously high view counts over on Rumble. But yeah, you guys gotta, like, if you appreciate the content, you gotta, dude, $1 a month, $5 a month. It's not like you need to do much, but it really does help. Where can people where can people donate to you or become a supporter?
Sure. So, I have my own link tree. If you go to either my Twitter or my Instagram account, you'll be able to find it. But other
links in the description.
Otherwise, go to, yes. Thank you. I forgot about that. Otherwise, just go to the Free Thought Project and you will see the subscription tab at the top. And again, 3, 5, 10, guys, like, those are the different tiers. We're not asking for, an arm and a leg or your second child or whatever, like, we could really use this. As Patrick said, I mean, my goal is always to be, excuse me for the reference, but something of like a Vice News, where we're kind of doing the investigative journalism, doing more of the video orientated documentary kind of stuff. And of course, not like with all the wokeism and all the bullshit it's turned into now. But at one point, Vice actually was doing some pretty hard hitting mini docs and stuff like that. So, like, I would love to get back to that point where we could actually produce it. And we've shown over the years that we know how to do it. We know how to package it. I mean, that's half the battle, right? Is anytime you're dealing with content, you could write the most important, powerful, empowering article in the world. But if you don't package it correctly, then nobody's going to read it. So that's half the battle here, guys, is how do you package stuff? And that's something that we've proven over the years we know how to do. We know how to assemble an Avengers dream team, So at one point, we were one of the biggest independent media companies on Facebook, on social media, and we were voluntaries based, like, this is something that we should have been embracing and really supporting. And I feel like we've kind of dropped the ball in that sense. So, but again, I have my own personal bias and all that shit. So
cool. All right. So, we were a long time ago, we were having, this was pre Elon and all this stuff, pre Twitter files. You were really in the know on government collusion with social media in terms of censorship and stuff like that. And I remember we were almost ready to have like a debate on the topic. Maybe I'm overstating, but I was sort of advocating for the position of, look, these are private companies. They own their servers. You have no right to sort of force yourself onto Twitter's website if they've banned you, something like that. And to which the rebuttal, I don't think it was from you, but it was basically like, look, all these companies collude with government. They're effectively like de facto government organizations at this point. They don't deserve respect for property rights. And my position was more along the lines of like, look, you got to slow down a little bit and take it case by case. First of all, they're not all the same companies. They're not all owned by the same people. I think like the strongest case was for Amazon, for example, who does a lot of, to the tune of tens, if not over hundreds of millions of dollars of server hosting business with the government. So I think the clearest case for being a collusive corporation would be for Amazon. But then Elon came along and he buys Twitter, and now it's like a privately owned company by Elon. What do you think about that? How has your experience on Twitter changed recently? From my perspective, my experience in Twitter has improved drastically. I've got more reach. I get more engagement. Certainly I don't see a lot of my friends getting, like, there used to be these ban waves. You remember? Like, there would be these like message chains that would go out being like, hey, here's the new ban wave. And there would be a list of all the people, all the freedom loving people that got banned. I don't see that anymore. What's your experience on Twitter?
Yeah, well, just recently there was that flyer for the Trans Day of Vengeance. I don't know if you happen to hear about that, but like there is, okay, so that was going around and everybody who shared that got a ban on Twitter, including Matt Agrest, my co-founder and editor-in-chief at the Free Thought Project. So yeah, yes and no, you know, and I do want to get back to this whole like host the content, bake the cake argument, because I really think this is interesting and I would love to kind of delve into that a little bit more. But I don't know, I'm disappointed because, and again, this is probably my own personal bias. We were told that all accounts were going to be unsuspended. Guess whose accounts didn't get unsuspended? You know, and I had 3 of them. I had End the Drug War, I had Police the Police, I had the Free. Okay, I saw an article headline saying Twitter censorship is actually worse now that Elon bought it. And I don't know, I didn't get a chance to dig into that. But we are seeing Elon kind of personally flexing his own like authoritarianism a bit. Started right around the very beginning, you know, right after he made the bold claim that he was a free speech absolutist. He banned the Elon jet guy, you know, and I just feel like it's just been this kind of consistency of double standards and kind of a lot of hot air, you know, and unfortunately I feel like the right is not doing a lot to discern a lot of these different points. And it's just like, yeah, rah, 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 like Elon, you know, and again, like he makes some good points occasionally, sometimes even sounds like an anarchist. I think at one point taxation is down. So like, hey, like you get some kudos and some points for that. Sure. But there's just too many problems with over the past, his family. I mean, there's just so many issues with Elon, and we don't even have to get into that, but I don't know, man. I do like in some sense that it seems a little more playful. The moderation isn't as strict. The wokeism seems to be gone. In fact, they have the Doge dog right now as the like Twitter icon, you know? So I mean, like, he's a troll, you know, and I love that aspect of Elon. Like, you can't say that like that isn't fun because he makes it fun and he's kind of this, you know, eccentric millionaire, billionaire or whatever, you know? So like that part of Elon, I think everybody could kind of gravitate to and appreciate the entertainment value. But I'm not seeing all the promises. I'm not seeing the free speech absolutist type of promises. And there's just problems, man. There's a lot of problems with it. So
let's talk about that, because I think that's the best counterexample of what Elon's doing wrong. For example, banning all the people that shared that meme. Most of the people, I think, that shared that it wasn't a meme. It was a advertisement for the Trans Day of Vengeance or whatever. It was it was like naming a time, a date, and I forget specifically. But a lot of the people that shared it were sharing it disparagingly, like, "Hey, look at these violent people organizing violence.
Right.
Here's the evidence that they're doing it." And those are the people that also got banned. So it was like the bans came without any awareness of the context. It was just, don't share this particular image. And as somebody that, and I hate to be that guy that says, as a fill in the blank, here's my opinion, but I have experience in this area at Float. You know, you have to come up with house rules. You have to come up with rules for what you will and won't allow on your servers. Like, there are some things, some types of terrible, disgusting content that I will not wake up every day and go into work to keep the lights on the servers so that you can host your explicit child material, for example. I'm just not going to do that.
Sure.
You got call me a free speech, not absolutist if you want, but I'm not doing that. So you have to come up with rules, and it's not a simple, straightforward black and white thing a lot of times. What do you think about that specific instance, though? I think it was absurd. I mean, Float wouldn't have banned it. So what do you think?
Which instance? I'm sorry, I might have missed that part.
I was talking specifically about the recent thing that got your co-founder, Matt.
Sure. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Matt Agris. Sure. I think they had to do what they have to do to mitigate the culture wars. And that's such like a hot topic right now. It's such a divisive, polarizing issue, especially the trans stuff, the trans rights, and seeing that, we just had that shooting with, the trans man or whatever you want to gender her as, so I feel like
now we're going to get banned on YouTube completely. Honestly, I just want YouTube to ban us. I just want it over. They've got us so shadow banned that nobody sees our streams anyway. So I just want to get it over with, YouTube. Come on.
But Elon has had the media kind of breathing down his neck, saying that hate has doubled and tripled on Twitter or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Twitter is based in San Francisco. If some of the original staff was okay, we need to moderate this. And again, I feel like there is a line that should be drawn. I don't know. Some of this stuff is happening in real time, and it's hard to really know the moral implications and the moral boundaries to where to draw the line. And I think it's probably, as you're saying, incredibly difficult to draw the line, because you're going to have people on both sides complaining and screaming and saying that you're doing it right and you're doing it wrong. And not to say that we have to cater and cave to public opinion, but there has to be some basis of some type of rules, and I get that. So I don't know. This all kind of comes back to, though, what are our expectations as users of social media platforms, and do we have rights? Do we not have rights? These are a lot of times private entities, but are they private entities? I mean, we're about to talk about that. And I think it kind of goes back to what was being talked about in the 2016, 2017 era of the can't remember exactly what state or what city, but there was a baker who wasn't baking or wouldn't bake cakes for gay couples or something like that, right? And so it went up to I think the Supreme Court, and they basically were you have to bake the cake, bro. You have to bake. And all the libertarians and freedom-minded people were kind of scratching their head. And so I also don't want to be in this camp where I feel well, you have to host my content, I'm entitled to it. And just because this is a quote public square, public arena, as a lot of these mainstream social media platforms have been kind of dubbed over the years, does that mean that we have the moral right to make them host our content? And honestly,
that's commie shit. That whole public square thing. Therefore, we have the right to force ourselves onto your platform. That's a terrible commie ass argument. The other arguments might be good. If government is actually colluding with the company, then maybe that's an argument. But sorry, the public square stuff was just retarded.
No, I agree.
Oh, I said retarded. No, we're screwed. Okay.
You're gonna have to add some bleeps in.
Nope.
But there is nuance to the conversation, and I think unfortunately it's not as black and white as a lot of people want to carve it out to be. And that's kind of the root of the problem when we come to any types of kind of contentious issues and topics, is how much time do we really want to spend getting into the nuance and weighing out all the ups and downs and the benefits and the negatives and moral consistencies and inconsistencies. And so
what do you think what do you think of this whole Trump thing? Half of me thinks it's a distraction, the other half of me thinks it's just evidence of a banana republic, and maybe it's both. So what are your thoughts?
I can't say I have much thoughts on it, man. These types of things, God, I feel like it could be a distraction. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, it's important to the people of New York, and or at least the state of New York. And who knows? I feel like Stormy Daniels happens to appear every time there's an election coming around, and that's not by accident, and there's always some type of nonsense going on with her. So it does feel like this is part of the culture wars, though. And of course, the left has their opinions and the right kind of eats it all up. And it just feels like always kind of being funneled into the liberty movement through right-wing echo chambers. And I don't know. I mean, last week it was like the Fetterman replacement thing, like body double. I don't know if you happen to see that, where it's like I don't even know where it started from, but like apparently there was like a picture of like a new Fetterman that they were rolling out after the mental hospital. And so like all the right-wing commentators started talking about this, and then it becomes a meme. And like, I don't know. It's just like, it feels like all this stuff is a distraction. Last month it was a balloon, you know, and before that it was the died suddenly stuff. And I guess there was some legitimacy to that, but even that kind of got blown out of proportion. And I don't know, man. Like, it's just hard for me to really jump on board these like weekly news cycle topics, because I feel like the more we do, the more we get detracted from the real issues, which is limiting government and voluntarism. Finally, the end goal of voluntarism. And like, let's not get so distracted that we miss the goal here. We take our eye off the prize.
You nailed it, man. Like my producer and I and a couple of the supporters have been talking about starting a sort of ANCAP news commentary thing. Like, think of Tim Pool, but from an actually libertarian perspective. Shots fired. And I was thinking about you described that perfectly. Like, you either talk about the things that are important, which is going to be like the same thing almost every show, which is you're going to get burned out on, the audience is going to get burned out on, or you get involved in this meaningless, just never ending cycle of bullshit that gets talked about starting on Twitter mostly every day. So I'm trying to figure out the appropriate way to do that, because people are interested in hearing the news, and I think they're tired of hearing it from these just incessantly biased sources all the time. It'd be cool for us to have our own, like what you're putting together and what you've been doing for years. We need more of that. But what's the answer then? Like, what do you do?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both. You have to stay into the news cycle stuff, you know, just because, that's what's trending. That's what people are talking about. Unfortunately, the algorithms reward the trending topics. So you have to talk about them. Plus, people want to hear their thoughts articulated in words that you provide them, you know, and that's where they base a lot of their arguments from. That's where they're going to get the foundation of where their belief system is on this specific topic. So, a lot of people have made a fortune and built a great audience off of capitalizing on the weekly news cycle stuff. And it seems like it's very vapid. It seems like it's very, menial. There's not a lot of substance to it. And I think that unfortunately is where we're at as a society right now, but we are slowly but surely moving towards hopefully more of that like golden age of enlightenment, where people will start to gravitate and migrate towards people like us who, we do touch on the news cycle stuff a little bit, but then we also give them the substance. Like, eventually they're going to want the blueprints to what exactly it is to be living in a free society. And that's where voluntarism steps in, you know? So like, I think, eventually, hopefully anyway, if intellectual integrity does become something that people are more concerned with, which I pray like literally every day, hopefully that's the direction we can move in. But even just the past 3 years, I mean, that was like a huge cultural tipping point. And that's the silver lining, I guess, of the whole COVID scamdemic, is that people are starting to wake up in greater numbers than they have ever before. And it might not be the same Ron Paul revolution where we're preaching like learn economics and like read the classics and understand the first principles, but hopefully they'll get there. At least the fire's been lit, you know, like the wheels are turning, and the ball is finally starting to be picked up by, I guess, I wouldn't say the masses, but like a bigger percentage than we've probably seen in our lifetimes of people interested in learning about, how to be the glitch in the matrix, how to look past the propaganda, how to live a more free lifestyle.
I think that's a great place to leave it, man. This has been a really cool talk. I hope we can do it again soon. There's a lot more that we could talk about. I would like to end with just sort of like a challenge to the people watching. Like, stop right now. I'm going to ask Jason to tell you exactly where to go. And I want you, if you appreciate his work, I don't care if it's $1 a month, go to wherever he's about to tell us to go and subscribe and support the people that are actually creating. They're actually out there in the world doing things. Do it directly. Support them directly. Don't ever super chat this channel through YouTube. They get 60% or whatever. It's silly. Don't do that. We all have direct options. If you appreciate my channel, go toss $20 in the barrel, in the bucket once a year. If that's all it is, that's fine. Disenthrall me / support if you want to support mine, but screw me. Jason's the guest today. I want to see everybody watching this video. Jason, where can they go?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's value for value. I'm sure we've all heard that, but like if you are taking some value from my information, the words that we put together and the work that we do, then we very much hope that you will compensate us and provide that value back to us. And it's certainly not easy. So please, guys, it is really important. I would say I probably exhaust myself for this cause. I'm trying to do so many different things just to make these concepts more well known and to kind of give them legs to a bigger audience. And it's probably some of the most important work we could be doing right now. In fact, I know you have one, Patrick. I know you have one of the Meme Wars hats that please tell me you have it. Yes. So I have one of those as well. And mine actually has the little decal. I don't even know what they're called. I don't know military speak, but it looks like it's something that the veterans wear, right? So I wear that out in public, and people are always saying, "Thank you for your service." They don't even bother to look at it and say, read that it's a Meme War veteran. They just think I'm some type of veteran. But in all seriousness, I tell this to people because I feel like what we're doing, and this might sound incredibly arrogant, but I feel like what we're doing, trying to elevate consciousness and enlighten people and teach them about the fraudulent nature of authority and all these different things, is so much more important than any of the wars that have ever been fought in, at least in this country, and obviously that's a big statement, but we're trying to break free from our chains here. And obviously physically was an important one. Obviously the revolution was important, but what we're doing is so important to liberate our minds. And that has to be the first thing that we liberate before we're able actually to be a free species. So with that being said, please support us at thefreethoughtproject.com. Again, that's at the top there, the support tab. If you personally like my work, because I'm also branching out, getting myself out there more, putting myself in front of the camera, being more of the public figure, doing what I can, please support me as well. The link tree should be in the caption description below this video. And if not, go to my Twitter account, which is JasonBassler1. And it should be there in the description. Also, jason.e.bassler on Instagram. I know these are kind of the big mainstream platforms. I'm also on MeWe. I'm also on Minds. I'm also on Gab. I'm also on Getter. I'm also on Telegram. So any of those would be great as well. And the final thing I'll say is check out our podcast, guys. We've been having a bunch of great guests. I know Patrick scored Dr. Robert Malone. We also had him on recently. We had Larkin Rose. I mean, we've had Barrett Brown. We had Daniel McAdams recently, even just this year. We've had so many great guests. So I feel like people are sleeping on our podcast, guys. Like, don't be sleeping on it. We're doing some good there. So that's it. And that's all. And thank you for having me.
Hell yeah, man. It was a good talk. I look forward to chatting more with you soon. Stick around after this. I want to see if there's some ways that we could collude with one another for freedom. All right, guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out in chat. Until next time, peace, love, and anarchy.